I'm going to start by mixing some cobalt blue with my number 16 brush, and I'm adding to that some cerulean blue. Cerulean blue is a cooler blue than cobalt, and it just cools the colour down for us. Now I'm going to wet the paper with the large filbert brush instead of the flat brush, because this time I want to wet the paper and try and create the beginnings of some cloud shapes with the water, leaving one or two dry areas of paper as well. So starting in from the top, working this water down, trying to leave, as I say, a few dry areas. I've put a few pencil marks in to indicate a simple landscape. Quite important on this one, because with cloud movement you do get shadows across the landscape as well, and I'll show you how to do those. And I'm just stopping this water just below the top of the landscape. Now that cobalt blue and cerulean blue. Bringing it down, still leaving the one or two dry areas. I think I'll introduce a touch more of the cerulean blue to cool the sky as it gets nearer to the horizon. And there's a couple of places in this one where I feel I could have left just a bit more white paper, and if I'm quick enough with a tissue I can dab a few of those out. And now we'll leave that to dry. Now that that's dry, I can see that it makes quite a good sky on its own, but what I do want to do is work it on a bit further by creating a bit of cloud shadow. So I'm going to mix with my number 16 brush a thin wash of neutral tint. Neutral tint's an excellent colour for cloud shadows, really natural looking. And it does help if you warm it slightly with just a little touch of rose madder. Now I'm going to wash the number 16 brush thoroughly, and then as I did in the first stage, I'm going to wet the paper. I'm not using the larger brush now because I want to be able to control a bit more now where I'm putting the wash, so I don't totally obliterate the first washes that I put down. So I'm going to try and put this clear water in the shape of cloud shadows underneath the lighter areas that I left in the picture the first time. And I'm trying to take good advantage of the rough texture of the paper to help me to achieve this effect. And now with the neutral tint and rose madder, just float that in. As we go along, there's some areas I want to soften and some areas I want to leave a harder line to give it that variety. Again, work that in a bit with a bit of clear water. It's important when you add a bit of clear water at this stage, you don't flood it. And as I come down towards the horizon, I'm going to make these cloud shadows a bit smaller so that I try and get that aerial perspective into the picture. Again, just dampen them in. And then just using the point of the brush to look like it's way in the distance, just a few cloud shapes. I'm trying to get that feeling of movement across the land. Okay, so that's that second stage, and we'll just let that dry. I'm going to paint now a simple landscape just to complete the picture. I'm going to start with the same colours as I've used in the sky, those blues and greys for the distant hills. So we'll start with a number 12 brush, and that cobalt blue with a little bit of cerulean blue, a little bit stronger than I used it in the sky. I'm going to take some raw sienna, and I'm going to warm that raw sienna with a little touch of burnt sienna. Now I'm going to make a green with Aureolin with just a touch of cobalt blue. And finally, Viridian, but I'm going to darken that with some burnt sienna. Now, with a number 10 brush now, we'll start painting this landscape. Just suggest a few distant hills, first of all with the cobalt and cerulean blue. Now the neutral tint with just a bit of rose madder. Now let's take that nice warm colour, the raw sienna, with a touch of burnt sienna. Now the green. Keeping my brush strokes horizontal, again to help describe the shape of the land. And now the dark green, to bring it right down to the foreground. And I'm going to work in with that, just to sort of tie it up with the sky, a little bit of neutral tint and rose madder. Now let's look, with a number 4 brush, I'm now just going to suggest a hint of detail, a few things that represent like little hedgerows and dry stone walls, just to give the landscape some shape. I'll start with some cobalt blue and neutral tint, and using the fine point of the brush, we'll just pick out 1 or 2 little bits of detail. It's a long way away, so we don't want anything too detailed. Now as these shapes get a bit nearer to the foreground, I'm going to warm the colour by adding a bit of burnt sienna. Add a bit of that dark green into it now. Not mixing anything new now, I'm going to make all this out of the colours that I've got. Just a suggestion of a hedgerow across the middle distance there. And we'll just take that dark green and put a large fir tree in at this side here. Another one next to it, keeping it quite, using the point of the brush to get it quite pointed at the top. Okay, we'll just let that dry, and a final touch will be to put a few shadows across these fields. And with a number 10 brush, put a few shadows, and you need to put these in quite quickly and not too many. If you obliterate the bright areas of the landscape, you spoil the effect. So it's a case of just putting a few in quite quickly and leaving some areas brighter. And that's all we need to do to complete the picture. I wanted to create a feeling of movement in this example, so I wet the background with a filbert brush, not a flat wash brush. You're almost trying to paint the shapes of clouds with the clear water. And before the next stage, make sure that this stage is totally dry. When you use the clear water to soften the edges of the clouds, make sure the brush isn't too loaded or you'll just wash the colour away. If you think your cloud shadows are too dark, remember that watercolour lightens as it dries. I've now shown you several methods and techniques for improving your watercolour skies. But the key thing really is to practice again and again. It should really pay dividends. You don't have to make each one a finished work on a large scale. It's often worth taking a large piece of paper and dividing it into postcard-sized sections and practicing them over and over again. Remember also to plan your sky carefully and keep your colours to a minimum so that your painting has a harmonious effect. And remember, it should be fun, so happy painting!
Now available on DVD. try these techniques yourself at home whenever you wish. The extended version of today's workshop is now available to order on DVD from the Painting and Drawing channel. For further information and to order your copy, go to www.paintingdrawingchannel.com.